The camera clicked. It was a soft sound, barely audible beneath the roar of applause. But to me, it echoed louder than any siren. That sound marked the exact moment my world collapsed. In the photo, she was smiling. That radiant, proud smile of someone who had conquered the world. Her navy blue cap sat slightly crooked on her head. Her gown was pressed and perfect. Her makeup was subtle but elegant. The lights of the auditorium reflected off her eyes like hope itself. And behind her, rows of classmates cheered, families clapped, balloons floated. It was a celebration of a journey ending and a future beginning. I was in the back row, standing next to a garbage bin because all the seats had been taken. I didn't mind. My heart was too full of pride to care. I clutched a bouquet of plastic flowers I had bought for $5 at a gas station. The petals smelled faintly of oil and dust, but I imagined they were roses. I whispered her name under my breath as she walked across the stage. She didn't see me, or maybe she did, and chose to look away. That thought would haunt me later. She had no one else. I was the one who raised her, fed her, bathed her, protected her when the world outside was too cruel, when her own mother disappeared for weeks, sometimes months, when men with bad breath and worse intentions lurked outside our door. I had stood between her and everything that could hurt her. I had given her my everything, not because I had to, but because I wanted her to live a life better than mine. So when she walked off that stage and ran into my arms, I let the flowers fall to the floor. She hugged me tight, like the little girl who used to call me Mommy in her sleep. Her voice shook when she whispered, "Thank you." I thought it was the happiest moment of my life. She even handed me an envelope, said it was a surprise. "Open it when you get home," she smiled, eyes shining with something I thought was love. I carried that envelope like it was made of gold. On the bus ride home, I held it to my chest. My hands trembled with excitement. Maybe it was a letter. Maybe she had written something beautiful to honor me. Maybe it was a gift card or a small keepsake to show she remembered all the birthdays I spent scraping together money for her cakes. But when I opened it, everything stopped. There was no letter. No words of gratitude. Just a document, cold, clinical, precise. It was a formal tip-off to immigration authorities. It had my name, my address, my immigration status, my years of undocumented labor, all of it, laid out like evidence in a courtroom. At the bottom, there was a signature, not forged, not anonymous. Hers. My blood ran cold. The room spun. I sat down on the floor with the envelope in my lap, unable to breathe. My heart pounded in my chest like a warning drum. I reread the paper over and over, thinking there had to be a mistake. But it was real. And there, attached to the document, was the photo. That same one. The one where she smiled at the camera while hugging me. The image of love frozen in time. Used now as proof. I didn't cry. Not right away. My tears came later, in the dark, when no one could see. I curled into myself, replaying every moment I had sacrificed for her. The jobs I had worked. The nights I had gone without sleep. The dreams I had given up just to keep her dreams alive. I remembered the fever she had when she was 9, the way she shook in my arms while I held her through the night, the day I bought her first backpack, the shoes she said were too ugly, even though I had worked overtime to buy them. And then I remembered her smile on that stage, the way she had said, "Thank you." Was it always a lie? The next morning, at exactly 6 a.m., they came. ICE agents. They knocked twice. Not loud. Just firm. When I opened the door, they already knew my name. One of them even greeted me with a respectful tone. They were not cruel. They didn't have to be. The cruelty had already been done. It was in the envelope. It was in the betrayal. As they handcuffed me gently, I asked one question. "How did you find me?" The agent didn't answer. He just held up a folder. My life in documents. And on top, clipped with a silver paperclip, was that same photo. Me, her, the hug, the smile, the click. That smile wasn't gratitude. It was closure. And in that instant, I realized something that still makes my stomach turn. Love doesn't protect you. Not when the person you raised like a daughter looks into your eyes and sees nothing but a stepping stone, a barrier to remove, a file to close. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you gave your life to, leave a comment below. Type the words, "I gave my all," not just for yourself, but to help someone else out there feel less alone. And if this story touched you, subscribe to the channel. Here, every story is a mirror, and sometimes seeing your pain in someone else's voice is the beginning of healing. My name is Dolores Martínez. I am 58 years old. I live in the outskirts of Houston, Texas. If you've ever walked into an elementary school at dawn, you've probably passed by me and never noticed. I am the woman mopping the floors before the first bell rings. I am the one who scrubs the gum off the desks, who wipes down the bathroom mirrors smeared with toothpaste and glitter. I am the invisible one. And that's how I've survived. For more than 2 decades, I've existed in the cracks of this country. Not by choice, but out of necessity. I arrived with nothing, no papers, no safety net, just the weight of someone else's child in my arms and a heart too stubborn to let that little girl fall through the cracks. I became what they call undocumented. But I never felt illegal. I paid rent. I paid taxes. I paid in sweat and calluses and silence. Most people think immigrants like me live in fear of the police or immigration agents. But that's only half true. What we really fear is being forgotten, being treated like ghosts. I worked nights for years so I wouldn't be seen. I cleaned offices while executives slept. I changed trash bags in classrooms while teachers graded papers at home. I vacuumed the dreams of others, all while burying my own. I never owned a car. I always took the bus, and when the buses stopped running, I walked. 2 miles to school, 2 miles home, rain or shine. Once, during a Houston summer storm, I walked through knee-deep water because missing a shift meant risking my job. I showed up soaked, shivering, clutching a plastic bag to keep the cleaning supplies dry. The principal looked at me like I was crazy. I told her, "This school is cleaner than any place I've ever lived. I take that seriously." She didn't respond, just handed me a mop. But that was my life. Quiet dignity, hidden loyalty, endless work. I didn't expect applause. I didn't want recognition. I just wanted one thing, to raise her right, to give that little girl the kind of future no one gave me. I never had children of my own, not because I didn't want them, but because I already had her, my niece, my daughter in every way that mattered. I gave up dating, gave up going out, gave up saving for myself. Every extra dollar went to her clothes, her food, her school supplies. Every Saturday was laundry day, not for me, but for her. Every Sunday, I cooked her favorite food, even when I was too tired to eat it myself. People called me quiet, reserved. Some thought I was cold. They didn't know that every silence was full of planning. How to stretch a $50 bill to last 2 weeks. How to fix a broken water heater with duct tape and prayer. How to hide from neighbors the fact that sometimes we only had rice and eggs for dinner. My hands were always busy, my back always aching, but I kept going, because she needed me to. She was 4 when she came to live with me, fragile, confused, angry. She had already seen too much, heard too much. Her mother, my younger sister, had vanished into addiction and chaos. No one else stepped up, so I did. I became a mother overnight. No classes, no books, just instinct and a heart that refused to let her drown. We shared everything. A 1-bedroom apartment, a small mattress on the floor, a single blanket in the winter, and still, she would curl up next to me at night and whisper, "Thank you, Mama." That's what she called me, Mama. The first time she said it, I cried in the dark, holding my breath so she wouldn't hear. I didn't just love her, I lived for her. But love doesn't make you visible, not in this country. I remained in the background, always. Never attending parent-teacher meetings unless absolutely necessary. Always letting her take the spotlight. When she won a spelling bee, I waited outside the auditorium, peeking through the door, clapping silently so no one would ask who I was. When her school asked for family photos for a class project, she used a picture of just herself. "I don't want them asking questions," she said. So I said nothing. I swallowed my pride like I had swallowed so many other things, because I understood. She wanted to fit in, to be normal, to not explain why her mom spoke broken English or why they didn't have a car. I understood, but it still hurt. The truth is, living in the shadows is not just about hiding from the law. It's about hiding your joy, your grief, your love, You learn to exist in a world that never sees you. I became an expert at being unnoticeable, a ghost with a mop, a shadow with a grocery bag. Once, during a school holiday, I brought her lunch to the community center where she volunteered. It was her favorite, homemade tamales wrapped in banana leaves, the way my mother taught me. I waited outside the gate, watching her laugh with her friends. When she saw me, her smile faltered. She walked over quickly and said, "Why didn't you just leave it at home?" I said nothing, just handed her the bag. Later that night, she apologized, said she was tired, said it wasn't personal. But of course it was. Every immigrant has a moment when they realize the person they raised is growing in a different direction. That moment when love feels like an anchor instead of wings. I had that moment that day, standing alone outside a fence, holding an empty lunch bag. If you've ever felt invisible in someone else's success story, I want you to share your voice in the comments. Just write, "I was there too." And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, subscribe to this channel. Because sometimes, the people we forget are the ones who gave us everything. She came to me on a Tuesday. I remember because it was the same day my kitchen sink overflowed and I had to turn off the main water valve with a wrench I borrowed from my neighbor. The floor was soaked. I was on my knees scrubbing with old towels, and that was when I heard the knock. 2 short taps, fast and nervous. I opened the door to a woman I had never seen before. Mid-30s, damp hair clinging to her temples from the Houston heat, clipboard in hand. Her badge read, Child Welfare Services. Behind her, in the shade of a rusted blue minivan, stood a little girl in torn pink sandals and a Mickey Mouse t-shirt so faded it looked gray. Her arms were crossed tightly over her stomach. Her eyes did not blink. She was 4, but her silence made her seem much older. The woman spoke quickly. Something about my sister. Something about neglect. Something about emergency placement. I couldn't absorb it all. My heart was already pulling me forward, already recognizing those eyes. Big black eyes that used to laugh and sparkle when I visited during holidays. Now flat, now hollow. "Are you the aunt?" she asked. "I am," I answered. "Will you take her?" There were no forms yet, no lawyers, no guarantees, just a question. And my answer, yes, of course, always. That night, she slept in my bed while I curled up on a blanket on the floor beside her. I didn't want her to wake up in a new place and feel alone. At some point during the night, she rolled over and her little hand touched my hair. I froze. Her fingers gently brushed my forehead and she whispered, almost too softly to hear, "Are you gonna leave too?" I felt that question like a knife, because I knew she wasn't really asking about tonight. She was asking about all the nights before. The ones where her mother disappeared into strange apartments with strange men. The ones where hunger and fear were the only constants. "No, baby," I whispered. "I'm staying." She didn't say anything else, just sighed and fell back asleep. I spent the next day cleaning everything, scrubbing corners I had ignored for years. I bought her a toothbrush, shampoo that smelled like strawberries, 2 sets of pajamas, and a soft pink blanket with unicorns. I didn't have much money, but I had enough for those things. I taped drawings of butterflies on the walls of the living room and told her it was now her room. I gave her my bedroom. She didn't speak much, but she started humming sometimes. Little tunes I didn't recognize. I took it as a good sign. That first week was hard. She wet the bed twice and tried to hide the sheets in the closet. I told her it was okay, that accidents happen, and we washed them together. She flinched every time someone knocked on the door. She didn't like the TV, said it was too loud, but she liked the radio, especially when I played old ballads in Spanish. She would sit cross-legged on the floor and braid the fringe of the rug while I cooked. The hardest part was bedtime. Every night, she would ask me the same thing. "Will you still be here tomorrow?" Every time, I answered yes. And every morning, I made sure I was the first thing she saw. I took her to the local clinic for a checkup. The nurse said she was underweight, malnourished, that she had 2 cavities and needed glasses. I wanted to scream, to drive to wherever my sister was and ask her what the hell she had been doing. But I knew better. Rage doesn't fix children. Love does. At the dentist, she squeezed my hand so hard her knuckles turned white. I told her to breathe, and she whispered, "Don't let go." I didn't. I taught her how to brush her teeth in circles. I bought little stickers of stars and made a reward chart on the fridge. Every time she brushed her teeth and washed her face without being reminded, she got a star. When she got 10, we walked to the corner store and she picked a candy. Always the same one. Gummy bears. The red ones were her favorite. She started school in September. She didn't cry like I expected. She just walked in, quiet and serious. I waited outside until the bell rang and the doors closed. I cried the whole way home. That afternoon, she ran out with a piece of paper in her hand. It had her name written in big block letters and a smiley face sticker. "Look, Tia," she said. I did good. She had called me Tia. Not Mama, not yet, but it was okay. It was a beginning. Every afternoon, we sat at the small table by the window and did homework. I didn't understand everything. Some of the math was already too advanced for me, but I sat beside her anyway. I Googled answers. I watched YouTube videos. I asked coworkers to explain things. I was determined. I was going to help her in every way I could. We started having Friday movie nights, just the two of us. Popcorn from a pan on the stove and Disney DVDs borrowed from the library. She loved Mulan. Said she wanted to be like her, brave, smart, strong. "You are," I told her. She didn't believe me then, but I did. She started calling me Mom by accident around the second year. I never corrected her. One time at the store, a cashier smiled at us and said, "You look just like your daughter." She looked at me, waiting to see what I'd say. I smiled and nodded. "Thank you," I said. Later, in the car, she asked, "Do you like it when people think I'm yours?" "Yes," I said, without hesitation. "Even though I'm not?" I reached for her hand. "You are." If this story reminds you of someone who gave you love when they didn't have to, leave a comment that says, "They chose me." And if you believe in the power of unexpected family, subscribe to this channel. Because sometimes love chooses you, and that choice becomes everything. Sacrifice has a strange way of becoming invisible. At first, it feels noble. Then, it becomes routine. And eventually, no one sees it anymore, not even the person you are sacrificing for. I gave up everything for her, not because I was told to, not because I felt obligated, but because I believed that love meant putting someone else ahead of yourself. Every day, every hour, without applause, without recognition. I stopped dating early on. There was no room in my life for late nights or romance. I remember one man, kind, soft-spoken, someone I met at the laundromat. He asked if I wanted to get coffee. I almost said yes. But then I remembered the cost of babysitting, the risk of leaving her with someone I didn't know, the guilt I would feel if something happened. So I smiled and said no. I folded my clothes and went home. After that, I stopped looking. When I got a second job cleaning hotel rooms, I would leave at 5 in the morning, walk 3 blocks in the dark, and return home after 9 at night. On weekends, I worked catering events. I carried trays of champagne I couldn't pronounce and watched guests laugh and dance under chandeliers that cost more than my annual rent. I scraped leftover filet mignon into the trash while dreaming of bringing just one piece home. Sometimes I did, wrapped carefully in napkins, hidden in my purse. She loved the fancy leftovers. She would ask what the people looked like, what the place smelled like. I described everything to her. The music, the gowns, the little cakes with gold on top. It became our ritual, a glimpse into a world I would never belong to, but that I wanted her to one day reach. Her birthdays were always a quiet challenge. I saved coins in a jar labeled para ella, for her. I skipped meals, walked instead of taking the bus, and sold homemade tamales to co-workers so I could afford cake and one small gift. I remember the year I got her a second-hand bike. It was purple with silver streamers and a squeaky horn. When I brought it home, she screamed so loud the neighbors thought something was wrong. "I didn't think I'd ever have one," she said, hugging it like it was a puppy. That bike stayed with us for years. It carried her to school, to the library, to her first part-time job. Every scratch on it felt like a badge of honor. She never saw what it cost me, but that was the point. I wanted her to have a childhood untouched by the weight of survival. I wanted her to believe the world was hers, that she had the right to dream. I made her Halloween costumes out of thrift store clothes and glue. One year she was a butterfly. Another, a doctor. One year she wanted to be a character from a show I didn't understand. I watched 3 episodes just to get it right. I ironed her uniforms before school and packed her lunches with handwritten notes inside. Sometimes a joke, sometimes just a heart. She kept them in a shoebox under her bed. I found it years later after she had already left for college. It was full. Every single note. I sat on her bed and cried until I couldn't see. When she got sick with the flu in 5th grade, I took a week off work. We didn't have health insurance, but I knew how to bring fevers down. Cold compresses, broth made with garlic and love, Vicks rubbed gently on her chest. I stayed awake 3 nights straight, watching her breathe, whispering prayers into the darkness, telling God I would give anything if she could just sleep through the night. She recovered. Of course she did. She was strong, even then. But I aged 10 years that week. I remember once, a teacher called me in to talk about her grades. I was terrified. I thought maybe I had done something wrong, that my support wasn't enough. But instead, the teacher smiled and said, "She's top of her class, confident, focused. She says it's because she wants to make her mother proud." I didn't correct her. I just nodded. But inside, something bloomed. Something that felt like peace. Like maybe, just maybe, the sleepless nights were adding up to something. Over the years, I tried to save. But emergencies always came first. The roof leaked. Her glasses broke. She needed new shoes. I always put her first. Every tax return, every bonus, every cash gift from coworkers went straight to her needs. Once my boss gave me a $100 gift card for Christmas. I spent it entirely on school supplies. She had never had new pens before. I bought the fancy ones with gel ink and glitter caps. She cried when she opened the bag. That moment made me feel like the richest woman alive. People say love is about big gestures. But for me, it was about the little ones. Ironing her collar just right, finding her favorite snack on sale, sitting at her soccer games even when I had to rush to work after, cheering louder than anyone else, even if I didn't understand the rules. There was a night, I will never forget, when she came home from a school event with a medal. It was for academic excellence. She pulled it from her backpack and said, "This is yours." "No, mija," I said. "You earned that." "But I wouldn't have if it weren't for you." I hung that medal on the wall above our dining table. It's still there, even now. The truth is, I don't regret a single sacrifice. I would do it all again, 1,000 times. Because when you love someone that deeply, giving becomes the air you breathe. You don't count the cost. You just give, and hope that one day they understand. But sometimes they don't. And when that realization comes, that the love you gave has been forgotten or worse, rewritten into something disposable, it shakes you in ways you can't describe. If someone in your life ever gave everything for you and you never got the chance to thank them, let them know now. Or if you are that person, the silent giver, the quiet backbone, leave a comment that says, "I gave in love." Your story matters, and someone out there needs to hear it today. Subscribe to this channel if you believe that unseen sacrifices deserve to be seen, honored, and never forgotten. It didn't happen all at once. The distance grew like a crack in glass, slow and silent at first. Then it spread, sharp and jagged, until I couldn't remember the last time her eyes met mine the same way they used to. She hit middle school, and the world changed. Suddenly, the little girl who used to hold my hand in the grocery store started walking 3 steps ahead. She would shrug away when I reached for her shoulder. Her voice, once full of stories about her day, became flat, shrinking, guarded. She started closing her bedroom door more often. Her laughter, once loud and free, became something I only heard through walls. I told myself it was normal. Adolescence, independence, a stage. Everyone said it was supposed to happen. But they didn't know what it was like to pour your entire being into a child and then watch her start to erase you. One day, she asked me to stop walking her to the bus stop. "No one else's mom does that," she said. I nodded. I said I understood. But the next morning, I still stood behind the curtain, watching through the window. She didn't look back, not even once. A week later, she came home with a new backpack. Bright, designer, not the one I bought her. I asked where it came from. She told me a friend gave it to her. Then she added, "It looks more normal." More like the other girls have. That word stayed with me. Normal. She started saying it a lot. Normal lunches, normal shoes, normal families. I tried. God knows I tried. I started packing food in fancier containers. I ironed her clothes twice so they would look crisp. I even started straightening my hair because she once said the other moms at school didn't look tired all the time. She didn't know I woke up at 4 a.m. every day to work 2 jobs. She didn't see the way my hands cracked from bleach or how my feet bled from standing too long. She didn't know I cried into a dish towel at night, quietly, so she could sleep. The worst part came the first time she asked me not to come to her school open house. "I'll just tell them you couldn't make it," she said. "It's okay." I asked her why. She looked at the floor and mumbled, "It's not that I'm embarrassed. It's complicated." I wanted to scream. To remind her that I was the one who taught her to read. That I stayed up helping her with science fair posters, even when I didn't understand the English instructions. That I sold empanadas door to door to buy her school uniforms. But I didn't scream. I just smiled, nodded, and stayed home. She returned that night with a flyer in her hand. "They're offering a college prep program," she said, "but they'll need your info." I read the paper. At the bottom, it asked for a parent's social security number. I handed the form back. "We can't do this one, mija." Her face twisted. "Why? It's free." "I don't have what they need," I said gently. "You mean because you're illegal?" That word. It slammed into my chest like a fist. I had never said it out loud in front of her, never used it to describe myself. I preferred words like undocumented or just quiet, but she said it so casually, like a fact, like a label. I nodded. She turned and walked to her room. She didn't say goodnight. Later that week, I heard her on the phone with someone. A friend, maybe. "It's hard," she said. "She's not even a citizen. She doesn't get how this world works." I stood outside the door, hand on the knob, frozen in place. That night, I didn't sleep. She had started to look at me differently, like I was a reminder of something she wanted to escape. Not because I was unkind, not because I failed her, but because the world around her made her believe she deserved more than the woman who raised her could offer. When her friends came over, she would rush to answer the door. She would introduce me as her aunt, never as her mom. One time, I heard her whisper, "She's just really traditional, like Mexican traditional." I smiled when I heard it, because I had taught her to be proud of her culture, of the food, the stories, the music. But now, she used those same things as excuses. Once, during a school event, I decided to go anyway. I stood in the back of the auditorium while she performed in a play. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did and didn't want to. At the end, I clapped harder than anyone. Afterward, she walked past me with her friends. I called her name softly. She turned. Her smile faded. She walked over quickly, hugged me fast, and whispered, "You didn't tell me you were coming." "I wanted to surprise you," I said. "You should have told me." The drive home was silent. The next morning, I found a note on the fridge. "Thank you for coming. I'm sorry I got weird." I kept that note. It reminded me that somewhere in her heart, the little girl still lived. But little by little, that little girl disappeared. She started working part-time at a local store, bought her own clothes, stopped asking for my help with anything. She said she wanted to learn how to do things on her own. But I knew. It wasn't about independence. It was about distance. One night, she came home late. I was worried sick. When she walked in, I asked where she had been. She rolled her eyes. "I'm not a kid," I said. "You could have called." She threw her bag on the couch. "You don't get it. You don't get how things work here." And there it was again. That line. The dividing line between her world and mine. Between English and Spanish. Between documentation and invisibility. Between the daughter I raised and the woman the world was now turning her into. If you've ever watched someone you love outgrow the version of you that made them feel safe, leave a comment that says, "I stayed behind." And if you believe that even in silence, love deserves a voice, subscribe to this channel. Because some of us gave everything, even when we knew we might one day be left in the shadows. When the college acceptance letter arrived, she screamed so loud I dropped the pan of beans I was holding. I thought something was wrong. I ran into the living room with a towel in my hand, ready to fight off whatever fear had entered our home. But there she was, standing in the middle of the room, eyes wide, hands trembling, holding a white envelope with the university's logo at the top. Her voice cracked when she read the words aloud. "Congratulations. We are pleased to offer you admission." She looked at me like it was a miracle. I held her face in my hands, kissed her forehead, and said, "You did it." She said, "No, we did." And I believed her. She had worked hard. She had studied late into the night, juggled school and work, pushed herself past exhaustion. But I had been there every step, behind her, beneath her, lifting, catching, praying. She got a partial scholarship, enough to cover tuition, but not housing, not books, not transportation, not meals. She needed help, and she didn't have to ask. I saw the numbers on the paper, and I knew what had to be done. That weekend, I opened the small wooden box I kept hidden in the back of the closet. Inside was a gold ring, just one, no diamonds, no inscription, just a smooth, worn band. It had belonged to my mother. She wore it until the day she died. It was the only thing of hers I had left. I stared at it for a long time, my hands shaking, my chest tight. Then I wrapped it in tissue, placed it in my pocket, and walked to a pawn shop 3 blocks from the bus stop. The man behind the counter looked at it through a magnifying glass. He weighed it. He offered me $78. I took it without a word. With that money, I bought her a used laptop from a community listing. The keys were a little sticky. The screen had a scratch across the corner, but it worked. I printed out her book list and started comparing prices. I walked to 3 different used bookstores before finding the cheapest options. I cooked in bulk and froze portions for her to take. I bought her a set of sheets, a pillow, and a small reading lamp. Everything secondhand, everything chosen with care. When we packed her things, I didn't cry. I folded her clothes with military precision. I labeled her boxes. I made a list of emergency contacts and slid it into her bag. On move-in day, I wore my cleanest shirt and pulled my hair back tight. I wanted to look like someone she wouldn't be embarrassed to be seen with. I brought homemade empanadas wrapped in foil. She smiled politely and said thank you, but she didn't offer them to anyone around us. When we finished setting up her room, she stood in the doorway. The hallway behind her buzzed with other families, laughter, movement, hugs. I waited for her to say something, to reach out, to pull me in, but instead she checked her phone and said, "I think they're having a welcome thing downstairs." I nodded. She gave me a quick hug, not tight, not long. Her arms barely touched me. "I'll call you later," she said. I walked back to the bus stop alone. The streets were quiet, the sky overcast. I watched the clouds and wondered if she would eat the empanadas or throw them away. Days passed, then weeks. She didn't call. I left voicemails. I sent messages. "Just checking in. Hope classes are going well. I miss you." Eventually she replied. Short texts. "Good. Busy. Talk soon." I knew she was adjusting, finding her rhythm. I told myself to be patient, that this was part of letting go. But letting go isn't natural for someone who gave up everything to hold on. One afternoon, I received a call from her roommate, a sweet girl with a soft voice. "Hi, Miss Martinez. I hope it's okay I got your number from the emergency form. I just wanted to let you know that your daughter hasn't been feeling well. She's had a fever and hasn't been eating much. I think she's overwhelmed." I thanked her. I didn't ask how she got the form. I was just grateful someone saw her. I left work early, took a bus, walked the last mile in the rain. She opened the door in pajamas, her face pale, her eyes tired. She tried to pretend she was fine. I didn't let her. I made her tea, sat on the edge of her bed, held her hand. She whispered, "I didn't want to worry you." I said, "You're all I ever worry about." That night I stayed in the dorm lobby, curled up in a chair, waiting, just in case she needed me again. When I left the next morning, she hugged me tighter than usual. But the calls didn't increase. The messages didn't come more often. Life kept moving forward, and I stayed in the same place, waiting, wondering. I started collecting flyers for local scholarships, ones that didn't require citizenship. I filled them out for her, typed her essays, double-checked her grammar. I mailed them from the post office across town because I didn't trust ours. I found a free tutoring service and suggested she try it. She said she didn't need it. I mailed it anyway. Everything I did was for her future. But the more I gave, the more I felt like a ghost in her present. Once during a video call, I asked if she needed anything. She said, "No, I'm fine." Then she hesitated and added, "Actually, maybe just a little space." That sentence cut deeper than anything before. Space. I gave her everything except that. I didn't know how. I was afraid that if I let go too much, she would disappear completely. She ended the call quickly. I stared at the screen long after it went black. If you've ever had to love someone from a distance they asked you to create, leave a comment below that says, "I loved from afar." And if you believe that quiet sacrifices deserve loud recognition, subscribe to this channel. Because even when our love becomes invisible, it still deserves to be remembered. It started with silence, not an angry silence, not even a distant one, just emptiness. Like the kind you feel when you enter a room that used to hold music, but now holds nothing but air. At first, I thought she was just busy. College, part-time work, maybe a new group of friends. Life is like that when you are young, full of noise, movement, dreams. I kept texting her, kept checking my phone during lunch breaks. On my way home from the janitorial shift, I would hold my phone in my lap, screen turned up, hoping it would light up with her name. It rarely did. When she did write, it was short. "Doing good. All is well. Just tired." But it was the kind of tired that comes from something deeper, something she didn't want to explain. I found out through her roommate's social media that she had started dating someone. A boy. Handsome. Clean cut. He came from a good family, it seemed. I clicked through the photos. There they were, posing together at a university event, arms around each other. Her smile was bright, but different, like a performance. There was one caption that made my stomach twist. "Thankful for a fresh start, away from all the old baggage." I read it 10 times, hoping I had misunderstood. But the comments from her friends made it clear. She had begun rewriting her story, making herself the heroine of a journey where I didn't exist. Weeks later, she called out of the blue, "I need a copy of your ID." My heart jumped. "For what, mija?" She hesitated. "Just some paperwork for financial stuff. It's nothing serious." I said no, not because I didn't trust her, but because something didn't feel right. The tone, the urgency, the way she didn't ask, but demanded. She got angry, more angry than I had ever seen her. "I'm trying to build a future here, and you're making it harder." I tried to explain that it wasn't about not wanting to help, it was about protection. That in this country, one wrong form, one misused number, could ruin everything. She hung up before I finished my sentence. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed her words over and over. "You're making it harder." I had spent 20 years making things easier, and now I was the obstacle. I began to feel it in other ways. She stopped coming home on holidays, said she had to work, said flights were expensive. Even when I offered to help, she declined. Her absence on Thanksgiving was sharp. On Christmas, even sharper. I still cooked her favorite meal, left a plate for her on the table, lit a candle, just in case. She never showed. I mailed her a birthday card, wrote in my best handwriting, slipped in $20 and a photo of us from when she was 8, covered in flour after baking cookies. It came back a week later. Returned to sender. She had moved and hadn't told me. I stared at the envelope for a long time, then slid it into the drawer next to her baby teeth, her drawings, her school awards. My museum of memories no one else valued anymore. One day, a letter came addressed to me. It wasn't a bill, not junk mail. The envelope was thick, the kind used for official documents. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a government notice, dry, cold, factual. It stated that I had been reported as an undocumented individual by an anonymous source. My heart sank. There was no signature, no explanation, just my name, my address, a list of places I had worked, my immigration status spelled out like a warning. I felt the blood leave my face. I sat at the kitchen table for hours, staring at the paper, my mouth dry, my ears ringing. Who would do this? I didn't have enemies. I lived in the shadows. I didn't talk politics. I didn't get into trouble. I was invisible by design. And then it hit me. The timing, the call, the sudden request for my ID. the anger when I refused. I picked up my phone and scrolled through our messages. There were gaps, long silences, cold responses, her voice in my mind telling me I didn't understand how things worked here, her caption about baggage. I wanted to scream, not because I was angry, but because something inside me broke in a way that could never be repaired. It's one thing to be forgotten. It's another to be erased. I went to bed that night without brushing my teeth, without turning off the lights. I lay in the silence and stared at the ceiling, thinking of every moment that had brought us here, the scraped knees I had kissed, the nights I sat awake with her feverish head on my lap, the sandwiches I cut into heart shapes, the lullabies, the whispered, "I love you," she used to say without prompting. I wondered what those moments meant to her now, if they ever did. If you've ever been the foundation someone built their future on, only to be buried beneath it, leave a comment below that says, "I held them up." And if you believe that love should not be discarded when it's no longer convenient, subscribe to this channel. Because these stories matter. Because people like us deserve to be remembered too. The knock came early. Too early. It was still dark outside. I had just finished my coffee. The house was quiet, and the only sound was the low hum of the refrigerator. I thought maybe it was the neighbor, maybe a package left by mistake. But when I opened the door, 3 men stood on the porch, serious and cold, wearing jackets with letters across their chests that made my stomach twist. Ice. My throat closed before I could speak. One of them held a clipboard. Another rested his hand on his belt, where a badge and a gun glinted under the porch light. The third spoke calmly, but there was no warmth in his voice. "Dolores Martínez?" I nodded. My voice wouldn't come. "We have questions regarding your immigration status. May we come in?" They were already stepping through the door before I could answer. They didn't shout. They didn't shove. But they didn't smile either. Their presence filled the small house like smoke, suffocating every corner of it. They asked for identification. They asked how long I had lived there, where I worked, if I had ever applied for legal status. I answered everything honestly. My hands shook so badly I had to sit down. One of them stayed standing, watching me the whole time. His eyes didn't blink much. Then they pulled out a folder. Inside was a report. My name, my birth date, my address. Details only someone close would know. Attached to the report was a photograph. I recognized it immediately. It was taken at the university graduation. Me and her, side by side. She was in her cap and gown, and I was holding her tightly, smiling so hard it hurt my cheeks. Her hand rested gently on my shoulder, the kind of touch that says, "You are my safe place." That photo had been printed and stapled to a report that labeled me as undocumented, as a threat. I stared at it in disbelief. My heart thudded in my ears. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. One of the men said, "This image was provided with the anonymous tip as proof of connection." Anonymous. But it wasn't. Only one person had that photo. Only one person knew all those details. Only one person had asked for my documents just weeks earlier. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was her, my daughter, my baby girl, my child of the heart. She had turned me in. The word betrayal feels too soft, too polite. This wasn't just a knife in the back. It was a slow, cold burn that spread through every nerve in my body, leaving behind nothing but ashes. They didn't arrest me that day. They said they had to process more information, but they would be in contact. They handed me a card, told me not to leave the state, told me to be available for questioning. After they left, I sat in the same spot for hours. The coffee on the table had gone cold. My hands stayed wrapped around the cup like I needed something to hold on to. Anything. I tried to tell myself there was another explanation, that maybe someone else had sent it. Maybe it was a cruel joke. Maybe someone had stolen the photo. But deep down, I knew. I had felt it building for months. The distance, the dismissiveness, the way she spoke about her future as if I wasn't part of it. I never imagined she would erase me with the same hands I once held through every storm. That night, I pulled out the memory box from under my bed, the one I hadn't opened in years. Inside were letters she had written to me as a child. "Dear Tia, thank you for loving me, even when I make mistakes. Dear Tia, I want to be just like you when I grow up. Dear Tia, please never leave me. I read them one by one, each word slicing deeper than the last. Then I placed them back inside, closed the lid, and set it gently on the floor. I didn't cry. Not yet. I wanted to understand. I needed to know why. So I called her. No answer. I called again and again. Finally, I sent a message. I know what you did. She replied 2 hours later. I had to. I'm sorry. That was all. No explanation. No remorse. Just 5 words. I had to. I'm sorry. I stared at those words until my eyes blurred. Then I deleted the message, turned off my phone, and sat in the silence. In the days that followed, neighbors noticed something had shifted. I stopped watering the plants, stopped opening the curtains. I walked to work with my head down, afraid to look people in the eye. Every shadow felt like a threat. Every siren made my heart race. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I kept wondering what I did wrong. Was it too much love? Too little space? Did I raise her so well that she believed she didn't need me anymore? Or did I fail her so deeply she thought removing me from her life was the only path to freedom? I played back every memory like a film on repeat. Her first day of school, the time she fell off her bike and I ran barefoot across gravel to scoop her up. The night she told me I was her real mom, not the one who gave birth but the one who stayed. None of it made sense now. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you built your life around, someone you protected, raised, loved with every part of yourself, please write in the comments, I gave them everything. And if you believe stories like ours deserve to be heard, subscribe to this channel. Because silence doesn't heal wounds like these, only truth can. I opened the door to 3 unfamiliar shadows in the early dawn. I remember the chill of the air, the hum of the refrigerator still running, the quiet of a house that had never felt so heavy. I thought it might be someone asking for directions. I thought it might be the neighbor. But when I saw the jackets and the badges, I knew. They asked for my name. My face felt tight, unrecognizable in the mirror by the door. When I said the name they already knew, my name, my voice cracked. They asked to come in. I said yes, because there was nowhere else inside these walls that felt safe. Questions came next. Where I worked, how long I had lived here, if I had ever applied for legal status. I answered them all. My voice was steady, though my body trembled. One man watched me like he was reading the last page of my story before I even got to read it myself. Then they slid a folder across the table. Inside were the facts of me, my birth date, my address, places I had worked, years I had given. In the corner of the folder, a photograph was stapled. Me and her, the smile, the gown, my arm around her, our victory captured in a single frame, but now proof, evidence, a weapon. They said it had been provided in an anonymous tip. They asked nothing about the tip, because they didn't need to. I had become the proof. The image belonged to us, but its meaning had shifted. The closeness I once felt in her arm now felt like chains. They did not arrest me then. They left me standing there with cold coffee on the table, the sound of their steps fading down my hallway, the folder still open. They told me to be available, told me not to leave the state, told me this was the first of many visits. When the door closed, I stood for hours. The photograph stared back at me. The smile on her face seemed too small now. The light in the room dimmed. I grasped at memories. The bike with the purple streamers, her laughter on movie nights. The night I held her while she slept with a fever. The time I taught her to stand on her tiptoes and reach for her dreams. All minutes I believed would build something safe for her. But safety is fragile. It bends. It breaks. The truth hit me softly and way too late. I was someone's foundation. I held up the walls. I carried the bricks. And now someone was demolishing the house. With the same hands I once held. I lay awake that night. The room too bright. The ceiling unbearably white. My mind replayed every small moment. The marker on the homework sheet. The sandwich cut into heart shapes. The joke tucked into her lunch bag. I asked myself again and again, when did I stop being enough? When did I become the obstacle? If you have ever loved someone the way I loved her, with every single breath, every scrap of hope, and every piece of your heart, Write in the comments, I stood strong, so they know they were not alone. And if you believe that even when the ones who saved us turn away, our stories still deserve to be heard, please subscribe. Because our voices carry the weight of silent rooms and unspoken truths. I wanted to forget her. I wanted to unlearn the way her voice used to say my name. I wanted to unfeel the warmth of her small hand tucked into mine during storms. I wanted to erase every memory that made my heart feel like it belonged to her. But grief doesn't let go in silence. It screams through your bones. It wakes you up at dawn, choking on a name you can't say out loud anymore. I started packing the things she left behind. A scarf she never wore. A chipped mug that used to be her favorite. An old notebook filled with teenage poetry and scribbled hearts. Each item felt like a wound. I didn't throw them away. I couldn't. I placed them in a box, sealed it, labeled it for later with a shaking hand. But later never came. The world outside kept moving. People talked about the weather, about the news, the price of groceries, but I couldn't hear them. Everything felt muffled, like I was living underwater. I went to work, cleaned other people's floors, took out their trash, listened to their children laugh and complain and call their mothers on the phone, and each time I thought of her, I checked my phone less. I stopped expecting a message. But every now and then, I'd wake up with her name in my head and reach for the phone before I remembered. She was still gone, not physically, but in every way that mattered. There was no apology, no second explanation, only silence. The kind that feels like punishment, the kind that screams louder than any insult. One day, while sweeping a hallway at the office building, I passed by a mother holding a toddler. The child was crying, inconsolable, arms stretched toward her mother like the world was ending. The mother bent down, picked her up, and whispered, "I'm here, baby, always." I had to lock myself in a supply closet and cry, not because of what I saw, but because I remembered whispering those same words, over and over, and now I wondered if they had meant anything at all. I started talking less, smiling less. The neighbors noticed. A woman I barely knew brought over soup one night, said I looked tired. I thanked her, but I didn't eat it. I placed it in the fridge and forgot it was there until it spoiled. Even in the sadness, my body moved. That's the thing no one tells you. Even when your soul breaks, your hands still fold laundry. Your feet still carry you to the bus. Your lips still say thank you to the cashier, even when all you want is to scream. But there was one night I couldn't move. It had rained all day, heavy, cold. The kind that makes the streets shine and the windows fog up. I sat at the kitchen table with a photo album in my lap. The plastic sleeves crackled as I turned each page. There she was, age 3, covered in spaghetti sauce, age 5, missing a tooth, grinning wide, age 9, wearing a homemade Halloween costume I stitched from an old curtain. I had no money, but she said it was better than the store-bought ones. She said I was magic. I closed the album slowly, holding it like it might shatter. I whispered, "Where did I go wrong?" No one answered, but the silence felt heavier than usual, like the walls were tired of holding my grief. I thought about writing her a letter. I sat down, pen in hand, wrote the date, then nothing. What do you write to someone who erased you? What words are left when yours were used as a stepping stone? Instead, I wrote her name. Once, twice, over and over, until the paper tore. I burned the page. And in that flame, I let go of the idea that she would come back. The truth settled in my chest like concrete. Heavy, unmovable. My love did not protect me. My sacrifices did not shield me. My loyalty was not enough. And still, if she knocked on my door tonight, I would open it. Because love like mine doesn't disappear. It hides in the corners, in the hum of a lullaby, in the faint scent of her childhood shampoo. It lives in the quiet ache that never fully goes away. If you've ever had to keep loving someone in the silence they left behind, write in the comments, "I still care." And if you believe that love, even when it's not returned, still deserves to be honored, subscribe to this channel. Because not all stories end with healing. Some just end with truth. Some days I still catch myself setting an extra plate at the table. Old habits have long shadows. They stretch across time and routine. I still fold her name into my prayers. I still flinch when I hear her laugh in a stranger's voice. I still look twice when I pass a girl with her walk, her hair, her fire. I have lived a lifetime inside this silence. But today, I choose to speak. Not because it erases the pain, not because it undoes the betrayal, but because speaking is how I make room for myself in a world that tried to forget me. This story was never about vengeance. It was about love, the kind of love that doesn't ask for medals, that doesn't make headlines, the kind that lives in quiet kitchens, in calloused hands, in lullabies, hummed while folding laundry, the kind of love that gives without expecting, that feeds without being thanked, that stays even when it is pushed away. I am not a victim. I am not a criminal. I am not disposable. I am a woman who raised a child with everything she had. I am the echo of my mother's prayers, the whisper of my grandmother's strength. I am generations of women who survived in silence so their children could speak louder. And now I speak too. Maybe she will never come back. Maybe she will never apologize. Maybe my face will remain a footnote in her success story. That's her choice. But I refuse to disappear because I existed. My love existed. My sacrifice was real. I do not need her acknowledgement to make my story matter. To every woman who has been forgotten in the pages of someone else's life, I see you. To every mother, aunt, grandmother, sister who gave everything and was left with nothing but memory, I honor you. To every immigrant who stayed in the shadows so someone else could shine, your light matters too. I carry no hatred in my heart, only sadness, and a strange quiet hope that one day she will understand, that love does not vanish when it is unreturned. It transforms. It becomes something sacred, a truth that cannot be destroyed. Maybe one day she will find that photograph again, the one where I held her in her graduation gown. Maybe she will look into her own eyes and see me there. Maybe she will remember that she did not arrive alone. Maybe. But until then, I will keep living. I will keep telling stories. I will keep honoring the invisible mothers of this world. Because we matter. Because our love built bridges. Because even when forgotten, we remain the foundation. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for listening. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to write in the comments, "I remember the invisible," because every time you say it, another woman like me feels a little less alone. Don't forget to subscribe so more voices like mine can be heard. And if you're ready, there's another story waiting for you. It should be appearing right on your screen. One click and you'll meet another heart that has survived the unspeakable. Thank you for everything. From my heart to yours. Goodbye.